Good morning and hello and welcome. This is the first Michelson's webinar for 2026, and we're super excited to get back to doing webinars and interacting with you and spending some time with you in this format. We did a lot of webinars last year, got really positive and good feedback, and we learned a lot along the way, and I hope you did too in 2025. So, got a new year, we've got a new schedule. We're planning lots more webinars. There are many that are on our website already, but there are many others that are coming. So this webinar is one we do every year. We've been doing it for about 10 years, and really we try to gaze into our crystal ball and predict what might happen in the future. And this is very hard. It's always hard. But as somebody once said, it's very difficult to make predictions, especially about the future, which totally agree with. And I think last year was incredibly hard to make predictions, and we didn't do very well last year. I think we got it. It's difficult to be decisive, but at my count, we got 13 out of 20 right last year, which wasn't very good, but it was a very unpredictable year. And we are expecting 2026 to be a very unpredictable year. So we've got another 20 predictions. Who knows how many of them are going to be correct? Yeah, so then the key point is that these are predictions from our focus areas. It's not the law entirely in all fields. We're going to stick to our focus areas, to digital data and tech, and yeah, hopefully that will be useful for you. I know a few of you asked about the Companies Act and various other areas of law. We're really going to focus in on those areas. It's relatively high level today. We're not being very specific. We are really looking at trends and quite a high level discussion. It is from a global perspective, although we are using South African examples, but this content is designed to be thinking globally what the predictions are. And then today, I'm very pleased to be joined by a few people from Michelson's, which is great to have you on the panel, starting with Mark Hank, who I think needs no introduction. Then Emma Quidding, who you also will have seen on many webinars. She often participates in our Sustainable Compliance Efforts webinars. So Emma, very nice to have you with us. And then Karabo Mokoena is also part of the panel today. And Karaba always has a lot to say, so we're going to have to try and limit what she says. No, I'm joking.
No, that's so true though. A lot of
Um,
predictions videos.
yes. Okay, great. So, really, the agenda for today, we are going to give you our 20 predictions. We'll talk about a bit about those predictions. But we're going to be very succinct. We've got about 2 minutes per prediction to get through all of them. But we will unpack those predictions. And then we are going to ask you through a poll whether you agree with us. So we'll ask whether you agree that that prediction is going to happen or not. And let's see the extent to which you agree. Please keep a tally of what you voted, maybe the number. What people do is they look back at the predictions they made the previous year, and then they compare with us as to whether they beat us or not. So we were 13 out of 20. If you did keep a list last year of what your predictions were, and if you were better than us, then that's fantastic. You can mention it in the chat and you get bragging rights. Um, yeah, I think that's about all. The last thing is just from a housekeeping perspective. We are quite a significant crowd. We're over 100 people. So if you wouldn't mind putting your questions in the Q&A box so people can upvote questions so we can get the best questions. Thanks for your questions in advance. We have been through those and we will address some of those at the end. And so we're aiming to have about 10 minutes Q&A at the end, but we will look at some of the questions as we go. And you're welcome to make some comments in the chat as well. Um, yeah, I see there's some comments there. I see a few AI meeting assistants have joined, which we've kicked out, I think. We don't allow AI meeting assistants to our webinars. And I think that's all the housekeeping rules. Great. All right. Shall we dive straight into the predictions? Unless anyone wants to mention anything I've missed.
No, fine.
Great. All right. So our first prediction is that countries will regulate social media. So we saw towards the end of last year that Australia enacted or they created regulations pursuant to their Online Safety Act, and they essentially banned social media for people under the age of 16. And I actually had an Australian with me this holiday and was looking at his phone to see how they were doing it, and it looked really well implemented. In other words, there were really good technology controls to verify age and then block people appropriately. And apparently, it's been connected with banks and I think possibly even the Australian equivalent of Home Affairs to verify age. And so they seem to be serious about it, and it's quite a thing. If you think social media being banned to all under 16-year-olds, um, it's a hell of a thing. So our prediction is that this is going to happen in other countries and that it's going to gather momentum. I know a lot of schools have banned phones while at school, which is also then going to be social media while at school. And a significant risk for me in 2026 is that the social media algorithms are going to push people more and more into their echo chambers, radicalize people, and we're going to end up more people on the far left and the far right, and very few in the middle, which is going to create a dangerous situation for the world and is something that really concerns me. And so I'm big on meeting in the middle and also on encouraging people to resist the algorithm. So, in other words, if you go into social media and search for immigrants and you get bombarded with material around how terrible immigrants are, realize that the algorithm is specifically sending you more content relating to that topic, and don't let the algorithm control you effectively. Resist the algorithm. All right, the next one is that courts will admit more evidence that relate to litigation. So this is from social media. So it's connected, and this is why there'll be greater regulation, is that we've already seen this as a trend and it will continue, is that a person is claiming disability, for example, the company they're claiming from goes into social media and sees that the person's playing paddle twice or every second day, and then uses that as evidence. And that's going to gather momentum. And so I think one of the key things is that people, but companies in particular, are going to manage the risks relating to social media more extensively than they have in the past, and appreciate that there's some serious risks involved. I mean, social media isn't new, but I think it's going to be a real trend for 2026. All right, let's go on to the next prediction. So the next prediction is that global regulation will be complex and hampered. And maybe I can hand over to you, Karaba, to chat a bit more about this.
Yes, I'll be short, John. But with the global regulation, as John has rightly highlighted, is that regulators are starting to regulate, our digital space. And I think what we'll see here, we'll see an uptick of digital regulations coming into play, but we're not going to see a Brussels effect. So all the digital regulations that are in the EU are not going to kind of spread around into other jurisdictions, which will make it very difficult for multinational companies or companies who want to be in multiple markets to have this kind of GDPR 80% compliance. So I think that will really require companies to look at the different markets that they're going into and seeing exactly which aspect of the digital market that regulator is regulating. And I also expect a few trends in digital regulations. I think, first of all, I think we will see a spike in enforcement actions by regulators. So we've already seen, especially towards the end of last year, so many fines and big fines, to big tech companies and even just small and medium-sized companies, especially in the EU, who are just not following digital regulations. And this really just means organizations need to just do their housekeeping. Some of it is because, you're not processing information the way that you say you will in your privacy policy. And then, that is a fine. And so it's just really housekeeping things that organizations can do to make sure that they're not one of the victims. I think we'll also see a simplification of digital rules. And I think this is because what we see here is in this space, you kind of need this technical and legal mind, to converge. And if you have too much legalese, very complex rules, I think we'll see organizations struggling to actually comply and understand what they need to do. So I think we'll see a lot of simplification coming. And we've already seen the UK and Australia giving us implementation tools. And this is my, I don't know, my favorite, and I hope it really actually comes true and I hope it's implemented. But protection and security by design will actually be a major competitive advantage for organizations. And yes, it is very, I mean, when you do the cost benefit analysis, it might be a little expensive to implement certain technical measures, to ensure data protection and information security. But in the long run, because of the proliferation of things like AI agents and highly autonomous systems, those default protection and security mechanisms will really be able to protect your business assets and also protect your reputation and trust. So that those are my predictions with global digital regulations.
Thanks, Karaba. Yeah, good points. And I can see, well, in the past, I think what happened in the Brussels effect is that countries said, let's try and harmonize laws. Let's try and have universal, similar laws. I think what's going to happen in 2026 is countries are going to say, oh, no, look, my laws are much better than your laws. My laws are more pro-innovation. They're not nearly as harsh. Come to us, come to us.
Yeah.
So almost like competition between countries through regulation, which will be really interesting.
Yes, John.
Great. So the next one is that GRC disciplines will converge. So what we've often seen in the past is that there's somebody dealing with privacy, someone dealing with cybersecurity, somebody dealing with other GRC functions, and they're going to converge into one. And the classic example here is that AI is heavily dependent on data. So data governance, AI governance, really the same thing. Data protection deals with automated decision making, and that's really what AI is all about. And so you can't operate in a silo. You're going to have to be operating and thinking about all of the issues in one go. It's something we've spoken about before, in that really data law or data compliance is going to be more significant in 2026, with privacy or data protection being one component of that. There are many facets, and you have to start looking at that broader picture. So connected with this is that we think that the role of the information officer is going to continue to expand and grow in importance. And in many organizations, probably smaller and medium-sized ones, the poor information officer is going to get lumped with all sorts of things, including AI governance and sort of saying anything information related or data governance related is going to end up with the information officer. At the same time, we think that CISOs are going to get brought more into the GRC side of things. So CISOs need to be thinking of AI governance and thinking of what are the laws that relate to cybersecurity. And then we also are predicting that many more companies are going to appoint AI officers or AI governance officers, but typically that'll be your larger or enterprise-related companies. Yeah, so that's that prediction. The next prediction, sorry, let me just check where we are. Yeah, so the next prediction is that regulators, sorry, just give me a second here. Yeah, so the next prediction is that regulators will regulate AI And sorry, actually, no, I'm getting confused here. We've got a list, but what we wanted to do, we've got it relating to various topics. But what I want to go to is some cybersecurity related predictions. So just give me a second. So the next prediction about cybersecurity is that AI-enabled security threats will increase. And Mark, if I could hand over to you to discuss this.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'm the reason for John being a bit confused. We had to change the agenda because there is a planned outage in our area, so I might get cut off halfway through. It's not John thinking that I'm talking nonsense, or maybe he is, but it will more likely be that I lose electricity. I think that one of the things we've already seen, and I think will increase in the coming year, is that there'll be AI being employed to search for and exploit vulnerabilities a great deal more than what it has been already. And also to create the malware, which is often going to be more sophisticated and more difficult to detect than we've seen in the past. So from a cybersecurity point of view, at a technological level, there's that type of issue. Those people that are already using the AI must accept that their attack surface has been broadened significantly. And one of the predictions of Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, is that the number one vulnerability for large language models in 2024 and in 2025, and they were correct, was prompt injections. And I think that this is going to carry on in 2026. I don't think that there's any, or to 2026, I don't think there's any reason for believing otherwise. So what do we also see just simply from the point of view of social engineering attacks? Now remember, social engineering is simply an attempt to get hold of your credentials so that somebody can masquerade as you and get people to do what they don't want to do. And of course, one of the issues there is deep fakes. And these are being used, and we all know already about significant high-profile instances where they're being used. And what AI is being able to do is to start dealing with these at light speed, to use a phrase that I see the cybersecurity people quite often use. So the detected deep fakes in 2023 were 500,000. And I just put to the panel, and you've got to answer very quickly, what do you think it was in 2025? Okay, panel, give me an answer.
750,000.
I would say maybe a million because of the AI enabled. I don't know.
Okay, you guys are off the mark. It was 8 million. Okay, so it increased by 1,500 times.
Oh, wow.
And so the use of deepfakes is very real. Okay, the misuse of AI in this way is going to impact on supply chain risk very definitely, because in our supply chains, part of what we are doing is relying on established and maintained trust with our suppliers and parties in that chain. And please remember that one of the things that's also going to happen to our supply chain is that some of these jobs that were done, in inverted commas, by humans are going to be done by AI. So being able to ensure that you're dealing with the right AI and that this is not an AI that where there's malware that is being used to be able to get into you and to exploit the vulnerabilities that you have is going to be a big task for CISOs. Then in recognition of that, from a legal perspective, part of what we've seen is that the Digital Operations Resilience Act in the EU is starting to be enforced and has become of increasing importance. In South Africa, we're seeing the joint standards in the financial sector. And just remember, what that legislation and regulation is trying to do is ensure that parties actually control people in their supply chain. It also deals with resilience, but you've got to be able to detect. So it's looking at the network of your supply chain as opposed to people in individual areas of your supply chain. Obviously, for the financial sector, that's a very, very important factor. Another issue that I think we will see a great deal more of is the problems that come about with shadow AI. Now, these are, it's the type of thing that we see when we are not controlling, where there's no governance, etc. And people are using, I mean, we cannot deny that in a lot of organizations, people are using AI to do their jobs very often unintelligently, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. They're not doing it maliciously, but they do not have the background, and they don't possibly know that information that they're putting into an AI to give them the answers that they want is now out there, and it might be confidential information. So that type of issue becomes very important in this context. And what we're seeing as well is that where we've got shadow AI, the cost of actually repairing that where there is a breach is significantly higher. The IBM cost of data breach report in 2025 indicated that the cost is $670,000 more where there is shadow AI. Now, I'm not quite sure how those metrics are derived, but you know, it's a big it's important to view it in that light. What they also saw was that in 60% of the cases where there is shadow AI and this increased cost is incurred, there's a lack of AI governance, AI and data governance. I suggest that in South Africa, that might be even higher than 60%. And what we're seeing is from a legislative point of view, if you want to call King 5 legislation, is King 5 addresses this, and it places the responsibility at the governing body. And we need to ensure that governance is in place. We'll also see increased ransomware attacks. And I'm not going to go into that because I've really covered the problems in dealing with other attacks and also business email compromises. Okay, these are very important things that are happening in our landscape every day. They affect our supply chains, they affect people in their personal capacity, they affect businesses significantly. So I think that these are issues and risks that we have to look at. And then, of course, there are some novel AI risks that we have to be very mindful of. We don't know when quantum computing actually gets to the stage where it will be able to crack the encryption algorithms that we use for security significantly in most of our organizations. And I'm not just talking about the larger organizations, I'm talking about small organizations, laptops are encrypted and things like that. Now, in that regard, I think that one of the things that governing bodies should be looking at is post-quantum cryptography to be able to establish how they're going to address this. It's going to be too late if suddenly there is quantum cryptography that allows the breaking of these systems. We actually, from a security point of view, have to be dealing with it already. So I've given you some, I suppose, quite sobering thoughts about what the risks are. But AI is also important in the fact that it is being used to defend against a lot of these risks. And the CISOs are depending increasingly on AI to be able to do this. I think that we're also going to see an increase in identity, stronger identity-based controls, particularly biometrics, where we're dealing with persons. But of course, what we cannot ignore is that we're going to see increasingly agents being used in the things that we're doing, and they don't have biometrics. So there'll have to be a mechanism to be able to identify those agents more carefully. Finally, I think the most important risk that we have, but that we can control, is that we have a shortage of AI skills. Okay. And that is from board level down to most junior users. And part of what we've got to do is educate and educate and educate. We've got to train people. And just as an example, I mean, deep fakes are getting so good that even the machines are unable to detect whether they are deep fake or not. So don't expect people to be able to detect that. What we need to do is to be able to educate people to expect deep fakes and put into other mechanisms in our processes to be able to guard against deep fakes, allowing people to ask questions, being more tolerant of possibly questions being asked and taking a bit longer, possibly to make payments and things like that, to ensure that payments are correctly made. That's just one of the areas. So I think we really need, and what we can do is we can train people. And that will start at governance. And John has already mentioned governance on a few occasions. And I'm talking about proper governance of businesses, not just AI, not just security, the proper governance of businesses that are using technologies. If we're using technologies, if we're to govern them properly, we need to understand what they can do. If you don't understand it, you can't govern it. And I think that that's one of the things that we can do. We can learn a lot more about these technologies, and I know they're moving quickly, but we can probably learn to govern them better and learn to govern the people and educate the people to deal with these technologies better. Thanks, John. That, I think, covers most of the issues that I think need to be raised at this point.
Yes, Mark, thanks very much. That's very insightful and lots of great content there. I think to summarize from my perspective, to maybe pick out a few of the predictions there, the one is that AI-enabled security threats will increase.
Okay.
Then supply chain risk, in other words, attacking the weakest link, will intensify. And then organizations will develop strong identity-based access controls. I think those are some of the key ones. We'll tackle and revisit a few of the other things you mentioned in an AI context as well. And then I also wanted to mention that the beauty of making predictions is that they're food for debate. And I see there's some good debate happening in the chat. And we had some good discussions amongst ourselves as well. And as a panel, we don't necessarily all agree on these predictions. Some of us feel more strongly about some of them than others. And I think quantum computing is a good example. Mark raised the issue there, and it's a significant issue. I think from my perspective, I don't think that there'll be reliable, commercially available quantum computing in 2026, but it's coming. It'll be at some point. And I agree with Mark, you should start thinking and preparing, but I don't think we're going to see widely used commercial quantum computing this year.
No, I do agree with you, John. I don't predict that we'll see it within 2026. I think my point is, though, that it's going to take a while to actually place us in a position that we post-quantum computing to be able to deal with the security. And that's something that we need to actually be addressing now.
Yes, absolutely. All right, great. So now we're going to move on to look at some of the predictions specifically relating to AI governance. And the first prediction that we have is that regulators will regulate AI. That's going to be a focus of regulators around the world. And Karabo, if I can hand over to you.
Yes, Don, thank you. I think maybe in the past couple of years, while AI has been emerging, we've seen really sparse AI regulations or enforceable regulations around the world. But I think now in 2026, we're going to see a lot of jurisdictions coming out with not necessarily AI laws, but rather maybe some, not necessarily a national kind of AI law or all-encompassing like the EU AI Act. But I think we'll see certain jurisdictions really implement or target AI rules and standards in specific sectors. I mean, for example, South Korea's basic AI laws coming into effect now in January, some of the requirements, which is almost like the EU, but very different in that it's really also very focused on innovation. And I think in the jurisdictions regulating AI, we'll see more sector-specific targeted regulations. And what this means is that it can lead to some fragmentation. I think we spoke about it earlier because different jurisdictions are going to be regulating and they all think their version of AI laws will be the best. We'll see fragmentation there with organizations maybe not being able to have this harmonized legal framework, for entering into markets. But I think what we'll also see is that organizations that are not in highly regulated sectors will be much more freer to regulate, to innovate and to adopt AI without very stringent rules and standards. So I think we have a double-edged sword there. So yeah, that's my prediction there.
So, Karabo, will we see the South African AI Act?
We will not see a South African AI Act. We will see, hopefully, in 2026, the national AI policy come out. But from all indications from, the regulators, it seems that their intention is not to regulate, but rather to let specific sectors kind of have their own standards and their own approach to how they're going to handle AI in specific sectors. And this is also very much driven by being this innovation-friendly market and kind of also in the understanding that they might not properly understand how to go about regulating AI and this fear that if they go very comprehensive, they'd be restricting the market in that way. So we won't be seeing that, but I think we should be expecting some specific sector-related regulations, especially in the financial sectors and in the health sector as well.
Yeah. I mean, I can also see a scenario where somebody complains to the information regulator and the complaints about personal information, but also about AI, and the regulator then being forced to say things, or whether it's in an enforcement notice or whether it's otherwise about AI regulation. And so,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yes, John. I also just wanted to add on that, is that what we'll see is that South Africa is going to try to use already existing regulations and regulators to kind of target specific use cases and instances of AI. Just like you mentioned now, because AI and data are inseparable and, there's so much personal information that is being fed to the AI or, the outputs of there might be personal information. So the information regulator can also in that instance assist. So they really are kind of looking at kind of a patchwork scenario, which I think is a good approach. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, especially, if it's still turning to some degree. So let's see what happens.
Yes. Okay, great. All right. So the next prediction is that the AI bubble will burst. This is a hotly debated topic, and there are lots of respected people from Sam Altman to Jeff Bezos to Jamie Dimon, respected in terms of their opinions relating to the AI bubble. I must maybe clarify that. And a lot of people do think that the bubble's going to burst. The question is, when is it going to burst? And our view is that it's going to happen this year. Some people have said 18 months, and obviously bubbles are very difficult to predict when they'll burst. We think it will happen this year. So it's going to have a big impact on venture capital and private equity, but not really the underlying technology. It's a little bit like the dot-com bubble. The internet just went from strength to strength after that. And we know where we are today with the internet. And we think AI will be similar. The other thing is that the Magnificent Seven will be even more magnificent. We think that they'll be strong enough and they've got such diversified, broad businesses that they'll be able to survive and continue and possibly even thrive. It's more the smaller and medium AI companies that will really bear the brunt of it. And so the legal consequences will be significant, and you should really be thinking as an organization, if it bursts, what's the consequence for us and how do we mitigate against that? Is definitely worth asking yourself at this point in time. Great. Emma, for some reason you haven't had any yet, but they're coming. So don't worry.
Don't
We're not
stress. I'm
ignoring
waiting
you.
for all this AI stuff to be done so I can come in.
Yeah.
Don't worry, guys. I'm not just here for fun, I promise.
And I see we've lost Mark. He must have lost power or connectivity. Great. So the next one is that AI will become integrated into key business software. So this is I guess, an extension of a trend. virtually every tool has come out with their AI assistant, or like Salesforce came out with Einstein. And we're going to see this trend accelerate dramatically. And it's going to also become AI is going to be embedded in critical business software or processes. So to an extent, in last year, organizations were doing some proof of concepts or a bit of testing and saying, well, let's try it on that process. This is going to be the year that organizations say, okay, great, we're going for our most important process or business critical stuff. We're going to really embed it in there. And it's going to be embedded also in the key software that we use, our ERP systems, things that are really mission critical. And obviously, that's going to mean that the risk, the likelihood and the significance of risks is going to increase dramatically. And we need to be paying attention to that. All right, then the next one is that AI governance will become the #1 governing body priority. So, we talk about what do boards care about? What is the key thing they're going to be saying? We need to get on top of the governance of X, and we think it's AI governance. And Karabo, maybe you can give us a bit more detail, maybe in a South African context of why we think this.
Yeah, thank you, John. I mean, like just as you've mentioned, because AI is going to be integrated in literally almost every aspect of like the business, it will definitely be a governance or a governing body priority. And more so because if you look at the South African Companies Act, is, the directors have this duty to be, reasonably like diligent in becoming informed before taking any kind of business decisions. And if you're going to be integrating AI in so many layers or aspects of the business, directors really need to have this understanding of, what are these AI applications? How do they work? What are the outcomes? And especially in the specific business context. And I think what this also means is that managers must be also ready to answer some hard questions on AI governance, and to also be very much ready to take certain steps to ensure that AI governance structures are put in place or fortified if you already had some AI governance structures. And this means really that I think in 2026 AI governance will really guide businesses, and businesses that have AI governance in place and are working on it will really have that competitive advantage in a way. And yeah.
Great.
And then yes.
Mhm.
Okay, and then I have another prediction. So I think that AI first companies will fail. And when I say AI first, I mean companies who don't have a strategic business vision. So these are companies who are saying, oh, AI will fix everything. So they throw AI at every single aspect of their business without really thinking, okay, what exactly do we need to automate? What do we need to make more efficient? What do we need more analysis on? And then focusing specific AI tools because not all AI tools are the same in that specific instance. So businesses who fail to do that exercise will really lose a lot of money in because there will be, I think McKinsey came up with the report at the end of last year showing that businesses are spending up like a high thinking more money on AI tools, 88% increase. And so what this means, I think, in 2026, businesses who spend so much money on AI tools that are not fit for purpose will really start to see the effects of that, and that will affect the bottom line there.
Mm. Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I see Amanda's comment in the chat. I think it's a delicate balance because organizations need to adopt AI. There are fantastic things you can do with it. I think if you do it badly, you're going to fail. If you do it well, you're going to succeed and leapfrog the competition. So, I mean, as you can tell, I think a central theme for us is AI governance is going to be absolutely critical in 2026, and it's the year that it really comes to the fore and becomes really important to get right. And so I think, Karabo, the next prediction is that AI risks will start to materialize more often, which is connected to this, and maybe you can give us a bit more detail about that.
Yes, so I think we've already seen, especially the end of last year was actually just so eventful, especially in the AI space. Is the end of last year we saw how bad AI governance really leads to outcomes, like practical outcomes that affect businesses and individuals. I think we're all aware of the Deloitte Australia scandal with the fictitious citations that led them to have to give a refund. Air Canada was held liable for the AI chatbot saying the wrong thing, giving the wrong advice. And this, for me, this instance was the most scary, I think, is that there's this Replit, this company, who had this agentic AI coding tool kind of run, autonomously on their system, and it deleted everything. And then it lied about it. So then it created fictitious data and put it in the place of the data that it deleted, when it realized, oh, I made a mistake, and then was lying. It said, no, didn't delete it. This was always there. I mean, luckily they were able to retrieve that data, but that just kind of shows, the kind of risks that are materializing and how often they're materializing. And so I think that would also maybe answer Amanda's question, is in that, yes, first movers advantage, but you have the risks are so big. And so if you don't have AI governance in place, be a first mover, but have the safeguards in place to make sure that, these risks that will eventually materialize because of the way that this technology has been created, and some lack of understanding in how to properly safeguard it or how it works, have some safeguards to ensure that, that first blow is not taking you out of business, that you can recover from it. And that's the most important, for the business to be able to continue. And I think one more thing on that is because the AI risk will start to materialize more often, we'll see more, I think, more AI liability cases. Right now, we actually really haven't seen that many in South Africa specifically, but all around the world slowly, using other regulatory structures or other legislations to kind of tackle some of the AI cases. So I think we'll see an uptick in that.
Perfect. And yeah, so then the next prediction, there are two that Mark touched on, and we can maybe elaborate a little bit on. The first is that AI literacy will become a key success factor. And so we've spoken about the skills shortage, but when it comes to AI literacy in particular, it is required by the EU AI Act, but it really just makes business sense. You cannot plan to be going full steam ahead with AI without increasing literacy. It's just a non-negotiable operational overhead for organizations that they have to incur. There's just no debate in my view. Kraba, any thoughts about that?
Yes, John, I 100% agree with you. An AI literate staff is really such a powerful tool because, again, it doesn't help you have these great tools, but no one knows how to work them. You still need to give some instruction and some direction. And if you have already a workforce that is very competent in, that focus area and have that direct the AI tool, you will really have this great return on investment. And AI literate staff can also protect your business assets from some AI risks, being able to be more cautious, be like, oh, I need to verify, like, oh, this seems a little bit off in this context, let me just make sure. So that second thinking, which is given by AI literacy, really does as well fortify you from some of the risks that are presented by AI in the business context.
Great. So then it was shadow AI will become a threat to organizations who fail to govern it. And I think Mark mentioned it and spoke a bit about it, but I think for me, a key thing organizations need is they need an inventory of all the AI models and systems that people are using in their organization. And they really need to encourage everyone to come forward and say, yes, I'm using this. This is how I'm using it. In other words, if you don't know about it, you can't govern it. You have to get control of at least, okay, what is being used in our organization.
Yes, John, I think that's so very important because, without human oversight is something that's a consistent principle, globally, with the AI policies or strategies that are out. And so what happens is if you have that registry or inventory, you're actually able to exercise some of those AI governance obligations or responsibilities. You're able to see this is the AI we have in use, this is what we're using it for. And then these are the risks that can happen in this case, and by promoting your employees or everyone in the organization to really come up and say, hey, this is the AI tool that I'm using. It also allows for sharing of different tools amongst, the organizations, like, oh, this actually works for X, Y, and Z. This is the best tool for it, if you have different people tinkering with AI. So yeah.
Mhm. Perfect. Okay, so the next one is that some people will have humanoid robots in the home.
Mm.
We changed this, or I changed it to some people because I think there are lots of people worldwide who want them, and they're going to be really good humanoid robots. Like Neo is one that's released by a Californian company, but I think China's about to release many. But still, from an affordability perspective, they're going to be expensive, which I think is why there'll only be some people, but it's going to be a theme for 2026. Lots of products, and it'll be interesting to see.
I'd like to
Okay.
point out that John was the only one that wanted one of these robots. The rest of us were pretty against it, but I don't know. People can debate it in the chat.
Good point. All right, so we're going to now move on to some more privacy data protection related predictions. The first is that governments will profile people. And this, I think, is of significant concern. Data protection law was really created after the Second World War to protect citizens from their governments being profiled and then discriminated against or dealt with differently based on their personal information. And we're going to see many governments developing digital IDs, which are very useful for various purposes, but are also very dangerous. And I think we're also going to see various authoritarian leaders creating significant profiles on people and then using those profiles against their enemies and against their opponents in political races, in litigation, in all sorts of contexts. And so, yeah, that's one of our predictions. The next one is that the cross-border transfer landscape will become more complex as regulatory priorities diverge. And Emma, if I can hand over to you for this one.
Finally, it's my time to shine. So yeah, hi everyone. As we're talking about data and more data-heavy things, I'll come in. So I know cross-border transfers have always been a complex landscape, but in line with what Karabo was saying earlier about regulations becoming more complex, I think we're going to see countries diverge and then really harden their stances on cross-border transfers specifically. We've seen in the past data sovereignty or data localization in certain countries, and it's only continuing as we enter 2026. Examples of it could be the EU confirming, or the General Court in Europe confirming the EU-US data privacy framework, suggesting a willingness to continue data flows despite ongoing legal and political uncertainty. At the same time, the UK is becoming more flexible with cross-border transfers. We've just seen through the Data Use and Access Act that they're replacing the test for adequacy, or at least adapting it from being substantially similar laws to laws that aren't aren't materially lower than that of the UK standards. So we are seeing some lightening and restriction from certain jurisdictions. In the converse, you get countries like the US where they're tightening controls. So there was the data security program and the bulk transfer rule, which came into effect last year, which restricts the transfer of sensitive information from the US to certain countries of concern. So we're seeing this fragmented cross-border transfers landscape where some rules are more restrictive and some allowing for a lot more data to flow between borders. So for organizations moving forward in 2026, it really is important to have, I don't know, a handle on which countries have which requirements and comply as you must, I guess. But yeah, really a complex landscape to navigate as we go into 2026.
So,
John.
yeah, Emma, to put you on the spot, we didn't plan this. Two quickfire questions for you, yes or no? Will the regulator publish a guidance note on cross-border transfers in 2026?
If I speak, I'm in trouble.
No, just yes or no. That's all.
I'd like
Yes
to think so, yes.
Okay. And will the regulator in South Africa publish a list of countries that have adequate protection?
No, I don't think so. I think we'll be relying more on tools, and I don't know if we'll have an actual adequacy list. unfortunately. But that's just my
Uh,
humble opinion.
no, I agree. I think I agree 100%.
Yeah.
All right. So go for it.
I was just going to say, on that vein, saying that cross-border transfers are going to be complex, I've got the good news of my prediction being that privacy assessments will be simplified. So for my next prediction, I want to contextualize it that in 2025, I focused a lot on assessments. So we're talking data protection impact assessments, personal information impact assessments, transfer impact assessments. So really all the assessments you can kind of be doing. And what I came to realize in 2025 is that there are very complicated, almost asks from the legislation. If you're doing one properly, you're going to have a background in tech and in legal and in governance. So it's quite a difficult thing to ask an organization to do or require from an organization. And we had the opportunity to ask the regulator about personal information impact assessments last year. And they confirmed that we should look towards international guidance on how to conduct them here in South Africa. And by looking at international guidance, specifically in the UK with the new Data Use and Access Act, I found that we're moving away from these kind of rigid box ticking exercises into more flexible risk-based approaches with these assessments. So we're trying to ensure that the higher risk processing activities are looked at and investigated and assessed, but at the same time not putting this dampener on operations by requiring these assessments in so much detail. So if South Africa continues to align with international standards, 2026 is likely to see assessments become more focused, more usable, and better integrated into organizations' operations.
Thanks, Emma. That's a good prediction. Great. So the next one is that consumers will become increasingly savvy and demanding. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to elaborate on that one, just to give us some time, because the next one I think is particularly interesting, particularly in the South African context. And Emma, what are we predicting that the regulator is going to focus on in 2026?
So by kind of looking at what our regulator's been doing and what they've been reporting, and we, like I said, had a stakeholders engagement with them towards the end of last year, we predict that the information regulator will be focusing on NPOs, so non-profit organizations, estate agents, and gated access controlled communities. So that's something we've been thinking about for a while, is that the regulator is going to be focusing on those kind of organizations. And finally, foreign companies. We've seen the regulators settle with WhatsApp towards the end of last year, and they've really been pushing the argument that organizations that don't exist in South Africa but process South Africans' personal information do have to comply with POPIA and PAIA. So we'll be seeing the regulator really take foreign companies to task this year. So overall, we'll be predicting that the regulator will be issuing more notices and being stricter with enforcement, particularly with these three different areas. But John, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that was well said. I think the regulators are also very keen on their portal. They won awards for it, and they are going to push that portal. They want you to be registered. They want you to be reporting through it. And I think if you're not doing that, you could suffer some serious consequences.
If I could add just there, I think the regulator really was wanting everyone to kind of know in 2026 that the portal isn't there to catch you out, but it is also a requirement. So for organizations to make sure that you are properly registered on the portal, and it is a really useful tool, is what we saw last year. So if your information officers or whoever is responsible for it at your organization checks it out, it would be really helpful moving forward in 2026.
Great. So we're now going to turn this on you, and I'm going to launch a poll. And here are all our 20 predictions. And if you wouldn't mind reading through and tick the ones you think will come true in 2026. And let's see if you agree with us. Yeah. So while you're busy with that, thanks for the Quinton. Thank you for your comments and questions. I see there's lots going on in the chat. We also received quite a few questions in advance, and it's going to be quite tricky to bring this together, given that we've only got 6 minutes. I'm trying to see. So there's some discussion going on there. Yeah. Great. So I think thanks for doing the poll. Those answers are coming through nicely. Yeah. So, and also maybe if Emma and Karabo, if you can have a look if there are any questions you particularly would like to take. Otherwise, there
Yeah.
are a few that we could put. But
Mm.
yeah, Karabo.
Yeah, I think I just want to make a comment for Quinton, because you just actually touched on something that I was looking at very deeply during the holidays and the existential crisis of AI. I mean, risks of AI. And I think the issue here is that there are other risks that are so immediate that people actually aren't realizing just the existential risks that exists, with how the technology is made, not really understanding how it operates, just, what's going on under the hood. And there's been so many studies that are showing that it has traits of being very deceptive, murderous, when given certain situations, even when told not to hurt human life, take certain steps for self-preservation. And so I think understanding that these risks exist, is very important. And unfortunately, AI hype has drowned out the voices that are trying to tell, society, hey guys, there's actually something bigger than, hallucinations in your text. There's actually like this machine that is now also capable of switching itself on when it's off. That's so I do there agree with you that maybe we need a more focus on those risks as well.
Yeah, that good point. All right,
Yeah.
great. So let's end the poll there. Thank you very much for your responses, and I'll just share the results there to show you. Yeah, so a bit mixed, but I would say the majority of you agree with us, although it's pretty 50-50. Yeah, interesting. It is. It's predictions are tough, aren't they? But thank you very much. That's really interesting. So keep a note of what your answers were. We can then check on it next year to see how accurate we were. As I said, last year I think we got 13 out of 20. So thanks very much for that. All right, so then let's go to a few questions. I think if we maybe tackle some questions that we got in advance of today's session. I think actually the one I'd like to start with, and so we definitely don't run out of time, is what is the panel's biggest legal concern for 2026? And I don't know if any of you would like to respond.
I think for me, because of some of the conversations I've had, is organizations kind of using AI tools to do certain work out of their expertise and then running with that. And then, or either bringing that to us, and we have to kind of like undo the really big kind of mess, that is created by an AI tool, that is efficient, than someone who doesn't have the expertise there. So I think the legal risk here is really just trusting what you get from AI because it sounds good and it's in line with what you want to do in your business, without verifying with lawyers. So I think, yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I think building on that, for me, I think the single biggest risk would be organizations failing to govern AI. That is the thing that would cause the biggest drama in 2026. And probably connected to that would be authorities, regulators failing to regulate AI. Those to me are the two most significant in 2026. Yeah, so then yes,
I will
Catherine.
say one more, maybe, is that consumers will actually start laying complaints and then they'll be starting to enforce their rights more often. And so I think that companies that aren't really doing what they're saying they're doing with consumers' data specifically, especially now with the information regulator having, that option for consumers to for data subjects, lay complaints directly, they're making it easier for them as well. So I think that is also a big risk there because the barrier has been lowered, for everyday person. So
Yeah, exactly. And then looking at the other questions, sure, we've got questions about the coffee bill. We've got questions around King 5, FSPs. Yeah, I mean there's a lot to cover there, but we have run out of time. We've hit the top of the hour. So your feedback's always incredibly useful and important to us, and we're going to factor that in planning the future webinars that we're doing for this year. So thank you very much for your input and your comments. It's great to see the amounts of interaction and thought around this. And that's part of what we wanted to achieve today, was to get you thinking and get us all planning a bit. So we always launch this feedback poll at the end. If you wouldn't mind just answering that. We always like to know whether we're hitting the mark or whether there's room for improvement. And then I see there are a couple of hands up. What we could do, Ricky, if you'd like to talk, we can allow you to talk. Yeah, I think that might have been a mistake because your hand's gone down. Yeah, but thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And as we mentioned at the beginning, we will be publishing that list of predictions on our website. And there is a recording of today, which we'll make available to you. And yeah, we really look forward to engaging with you for the rest of the year. So please check our website to see what events we are doing. Join some of our events, and obviously always engage with us. We're here to help, and we like engaging and talking to people. So please feel free to engage with any one of us. Thank you very much to the panel. Emma, thank you very much. Karabo, thanks very much. And Mark in his absence. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.